Well, welcome back to Extraordinary Drummer Show. As you know, I'm your host, Cheron Moore. My guest today, I'm really excited. You know, there are drummers that are hyper. This is the mellowest cat you ever want to be. None of that stuff. I even was told when he play, he don't have a towel or bottled water back there. He's so cool.
No, that ain't quite the truth, but
His credits reads like the who's who of drumming. Of course, you know, with Frank Zappa, the mothers of inventions, Genesis, Weather Report, Santana, on and on and on. He's a drummer's drummer, a percussionist, a session musician, a producer, a teacher, and I'm gonna even throw in a basketball coach. You help me welcome my guest today, a gentleman's gentleman, Chester Thompson. Hey, Chester.
Hey, Cheron. Thanks for inviting me to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. You know, I'm looking forward to having you. When I think I talked to Dennis Chambers and I said, man, I really would like to talk with Chester. And he railed back and he said, you know, that's a good dude, man. Like, you know, that's a good dude. So thank you for being on the show. You know, before I get to your huge body of work and, you know, all the awesome experience and well-traveled you are, I'm going to take you all the way back. I'm going to go way back to the beginning. I read where you started playing drums at 11 years old.
Well, that was the first school drum lessons. You know, here's how you hold the sticks. This is a paradiddle. This is, you know, that whole thing. That was 7th grade. That was a school band teacher who happened to be a trumpet player. Had to teach all the instruments, you know, and yeah, but that was when I first officially got to, you know, consider myself a drummer, you know.
Your father or your family was into music, is that right?
Well, didn't know my father. He died when I was too young to know him. Apparently he did play some drums. My oldest brother, however, I remember when I first brought that first snare drum home from school so I could practice. He came over one day. He probably hadn't touched a drum in 20, 30 years. He says, oh yeah, check it out. Here's how you play a roll. And he just picked up the sticks and it's like, play this, to me at the time, amazing, you know, buzz roll. And my mouth probably fell open. And it's like, he hadn't touched a drum in years. Apparently, you know, he never got to do drum set or do it for a living, but with the local drum corps in Baltimore, apparently he was because he just had magic hands and just was gifted. He never let my mother forget that he didn't get a drum set or get his shot at making a living. And he never let her forget. So when my turn came, she wasn't going to go through that again, you know?
Do you remember when you got your first drum kit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was taking lessons with a family friend, and he, by choice, was, you know, had become a jazz drummer. He had played all the other stuff, and he didn't really want to do that. He just wanted to play jazz. He eventually moved to New York, and we didn't lose touch, but like I said, wasn't available for lessons for a while. I was at his house for a lesson. It was afterwards. His phone rang, somebody offering him a gig, and he wasn't interested because, you know, back in the day, it was soul music. This is, you know, early 60s. And he said, wait a minute, I think I got a drummer for you. So he puts his hand over the phone and leans over to me. Hey, man, you want a gig? You know, of course I want a gig, you know. So he says to him, I got a drummer for you. He's 13, but he can handle it. And well, they were like, well, we've got to hear him first if he's only 13. So he actually took his drum set down to the audition and I played his drums and they liked the way I played. So the family kicked in and, you know, ended up getting a used Pearl kit was the first kit. That was in 62. I mean, it might have been 3-ply, probably more like 1-ply. These were pretty bad. They'd fall apart every now and then. But yeah, they got me going on that first gig, little 4-piece silver sparkle Pearl kit. Then I bought my first new kit in 65. That was a Slingerland, was a 4-piece. I eventually added another rack tom, you know.
Let me ask you this. Going back to high school and being a young man coming up on drums. I read somewhere where you would draw a mustache. Tell us that story. Tell us that story.
That's only once, actually. That only happened.
Really, that was once? Okay.
It was only once. Okay, so all the gigs, I'd say 99% of the gigs were in the hood. Okay. And there was, there was some nice clubs back in Baltimore. By the time I was in high school, I was playing like the better clubs and stuff. It was a real progression. So we get a gig out in the suburbs, out in the county, and we're a little concerned. And at this point, I'm probably 14, maybe 15. I think more than likely 14. And we were concerned about it because we didn't know what to expect out there. So talked with my mom, and she says, so she decides, she gets her eyebrow pencil out and draws a little mustache. So we play the gig, and this, I can't even remember the name of the club, but this really nice lady who was the manager, as we were packing up to go, she came over saying how much she enjoyed the band, and then she says, oh yeah, by the way, your mustache is running, because I gotten sweaty and the whole thing.
I read somewhere where some of your first tours was with Benny King and Jack McDuff.
Yeah, it's true, man. Benny was probably one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. The guy was just such a sweetheart, man. And yeah, so I met some great players doing that. It was only like I think we did like a couple of weeks, and then the band itself ended up having some stuff booked in Vermont, of all places, at a ski lodge place, So we went on and did that. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do it again because I just ended up busy, I did tour with Jack McDuff for a year, and that was going to school.
I'm gonna ask you this before I get to Zappa.
Mm-hmm.
With you having you had both the soul music, but you had a lot of jazz. Were you kind of bored playing some of the soul stuff, but you just had to stay home and hold pocket?
No, I love to play, man. Nothing better than a pocket, and there's so many kinds of pockets, that's what I came, in later years, I had to learn to accept that. Like with Genesis, I had to learn to accept the fact, okay, according to the terms I grew up with, maybe this is not conceived of as having pocket, but as I learned a little bit more about the culture and dug more into, the music and the history of where they're coming from, this is just a different pocket, and yeah, no, I don't allow myself. Okay, I learned early on that I can't afford to allow myself the luxury of an opinion of the music I play. Because if I do that, I can't give it all. I can't give it my all. If I've already judged it, I can't give it everything, if I've judged it to be less than something.
That is so deep, and I would love to hear you tell Miles that. I like to put a fly on the wall for that conversation.
I mean, the one time I did that, it was very costly. I didn't give it all. I didn't give it my all. And I learned, it's like, nope, we can't do that. It's like, guys that they come off a gig and they talk about how boring it was, or they, you can tell they're not interested when they play. No, you can't do that. Yeah.
How'd you get that Frank Zappa gig?
Okay, so, oh man, it all comes full circle. So back to Baltimore. Well, this concert promoting company, they assigned a guy to manage these groups, a guy named Marty Perellis, who shows up in a lot of Zappa, lore, folklore, whatever. And so I knew him from Baltimore, and we got to be really good friends. And I found out a few years later, he had ended up as the tour manager with Frank. And fortunately, I just heard this, like maybe 2 weeks before I got the call. And so one night I got a call from Marty. I think it was a Friday night, and he's saying, yeah, how'd you like to, play with Frank Zappa? And it was like, sure, I'm up for it. They flew me out for an audition. My audition, we jammed for about an hour straight. We just went from groove to groove to groove. We played some pretty hard rock stuff. We swung. We played Latin. More. It's kind of like the Latin of the day. We as Americans, we hadn't gotten as deeply into the Cuban and Brazilian and all of that, but we touched on everything. Reggae, we went all the way in. And after about an hour later, I got up to go to the restroom, in the rehearsal studio, and I'm walking by Frank. He says, "By the way, you got the gig," and we started right in rehearsing.
How did you approach playing with two drummers playing? What was that like?
Well, Ralph and I had completely opposite styles. I mean, like I say, Ralph, having come out of Don Ellis, I mean, he's the all-time king, and I had to get that together real quick. I had touched on it. I'd been dabbling in it. Fortunately, Ralph was there because first, well, he told me his concept of playing odd times, first of all, the whole thing, never count past twos and threes or past four ever, just break it into multiples of twos and threes. And because our styles were so different naturally, we were side by side. We each had a lot of the other in the monitors, and we made a lot of eye contact, and it worked.
We'd like to invite to the stage. His name is Chester Thompson.
Tell me about leaving Frank Zappa.
Well, Frank canceled the tour.
Okay.
We were supposed to go out on tour, and Frank canceled the tour, and he talked. It was like he had mentioned that he had offered to send some money my way. It didn't really happen, and I didn't feel comfortable asking for it because it was a very gracious gesture to begin with. It wasn't like I was entitled to it, And Alfonso, like I say, Alfonso and I, we had been friends ever since, I think we first played together, must have been 69 or something like that, And so this would have been beginning of 75. Okay. I'd been with Frank since 73. So we were supposed to go out, I think maybe February or March or something like that. And Frank canceled the tour, and we had been on the road so much that I didn't really know anybody hardly in LA yet because we were always gone. I mean, George Duke introduced me to a few people and stuff, but it's kind of hard to get into the local thing if you're never there,
Mm-hmm.
And Alfonso kept saying, "Hey man, guys in Weather Report in town, why don't you come on down and jam with the guys, And so when he explained to me what was going on, I guess they looked for had tried a bunch of different drummers the previous year. They picked up, oh man, I think he was probably exaggerating. I'm sure he was, but he was saying, man, we went through 10 drummers last year trying to find the right guy. And it was like, well, I'd love to jam with the guys. I don't really want to do an audition, but, he says, no, it's not an audition. Just come jam with the guys. So I went down there, and of course there was another drummer there with his kit set up, and we just went back and forth, and they ended up offering me the gig.
Tell me about getting a gig as we move on. Getting a gig with Genesis. How'd you get that gig?
Phil called up one day. And Phil and Alfonso had just met, I guess, a few weeks before in LA. And Alfonso was a huge Genesis fan, actually. And so him and Phil met and traded numbers and stuff. So here I am in San Francisco staying with a friend. I wasn't in a hotel. I had a friend up there, and I was staying at his place. And the phone rings. I hear this little British voice, and it's like, "Hey, this is Phil Collins. I just, got your number from Alfonso. You want to know if you're interested in playing with Genesis?" And he says, "Well, it's like as it turned out, he had come to what turned out to be the last Weather Report gig, which was in London. So he was at that gig, and drummers knew that Roxy and Elsewhere album with Frank. In fact, first day of rehearsal, first thing he says is, "Okay, how do you play the lick?" The double drum fill that we did on More Trouble Every Day with Frank, which ended up in a Genesis tune as well, called Afterglow, I think. And anyway, so he was saying, "Man, I played some of the stuff you recorded for the other guys, and they're fine with it. There's no audition if you want the gig. You're good to go. So yeah, that ended up working out. I finished. I had had another 3 weeks to go with the show, and I just went on over and started rehearsing, and that was that. Yeah.
Let's talk about endorsements. What
Mm-hmm.
endorsements are you doing? What drums and whatnot are you using back there?
Okay, so basically, in '87, I switched from Pearl to Sonar, and that's when I ended up switching to Sabian cymbals, and then after that, I ended up going with DW, I think in '99, and I've been with Sabian since '87. Yeah.
I read where you received the Lifetime Achievement Award.
For Sabian.
Wow.
That was for Sabian. They put that there. That was at a PASIC show up in Columbus, Ohio, I guess it was. And yeah, that was, man, what a wonderful gesture that really, I didn't see it coming. It really blew me away.
We got a thing on the show we do is called Word of Advice, where I asked the drummers or the guests if they would leave a parting word of advice for the up and coming drummers.
So word of advice, man, there's so many places I could go. So if I could really dig in, I got to make it a couple of things. One, my life, especially the last few years, my spiritual life is more important to me than, it's always been important. I've never not known where the gift comes from. Okay, but that relationship is more important to me now. And you don't have to guess and wonder. I'm a Christian. I've been that for over 30 years. So, basically be grateful. Even if it doesn't come natural, be humble, because, you didn't, before you were born, you didn't put in an order, say, I'm going to be a drummer. I'm going to be a keyboard player. I'm going to be this or that. And at its finest moment, when you're really in the zone, if some like to call it, I'm talking about those moments where something fantastic comes out and you're just as surprised as everybody in the audience. You know you didn't do it. You know, it came through you, not from you. It came through you, and that's what I really want more than anything when I play. You know, so aside from that, well, nothing's aside from that, but as well as that, let me say, learn to listen. And when I teach, I try to teach, listen from the audience perspective. I know I'm not the only one. I can know a thing so well, but if I start thinking about it in the middle of doing it, it's probably going to mess up. I'm guessing you've experienced that. I mean, you might really know this thing well, but the moment you start tripping and thinking about it, you know, so you play from your ears, not from your head. I really, really believe that. So when I play with other players, and it applies to my practice as well, but when I play with other players, I've learned to, I very often play with my eyes closed because I'm trying to eliminate distractions. And so, because I want nothing but the sound in my ears. And if I'm playing a show and need to watch for cues, that's different, you know. But I try to hear it. Listen to the band as if I wasn't the drummer. I try to listen to the sound of the band. And if I can do that, I know what the drum should do. And if it's not locking, I can hear that as opposed to thinking about what I'm doing. For too many years, I listened to the bass because that was like the main thing I thought I was supposed to listen to. And when I started recording, it was like, yeah, we're locked, but I missed this over here. Man, that guitar player, it's like I should have been catching some of that. And, you know, just like the whole hindsight is 2020 thing. But if I'm really listening when that thing's going down, I should be saying to the producer, man, I missed this, I missed that. Let me jump in here and get that. It shouldn't have to be, man, I need you to fix this, you did this and that. I should be the first one to know, not him, you know? And if I'm listening to the band, then I hear that, you know, I'll hear it, get my mind off of me. Because like the hardest thing as a human being to learn is it ain't about you. It ain't about me, you know, that's hard, man. We want it to be about us, you know. But we're servants. We serve the music. It's, you know, you're not serving your own ego. And we all, I mean, I wish I could take back a lot of the notes I played over the years, overplaying and, you know, thinking I was all that. You know, life will fix that for you, you know, if you pay attention, you know. So I think that's the main thing I can share, I think, you know.
I appreciate you sharing that. In closing, if I may ask this question, Chester, the word legacy. How would you like your legacy be left in? And to be?
Okay. Musically, I'd like to be remembered as somebody who listened and supported the music and tried to make the music better. Personally, that goes a whole lot deeper. Personally, and I'm just so not there, and a little homework for your listeners. Check out Galatians 5:22 and 23, I believe that is. The fruits of the Spirit. I'd like to be remembered as somebody, like, one of the things I don't like about me is that I don't encourage others enough. I need, you know, and that's usually due to my own insecurities. I mean, when I first came to Nashville, I would get called for a session and people would be very complimentary, you know, sometimes, and I would just go, thank you, and not return the compliment. And I don't know that they were fishing for it, but I realized it leaves them kind of funny because I thought they were amazing, first of all. Most of the guys I played with, I thought they were really great players, but I didn't say anything, mainly because of my own insecurities and wanting to fit in so bad. It was like, oh, well, thank you. Instead of realizing because I have a name, for me to say how I honestly felt to them would have been encouraging for them, you know? And I've tried to do better with that these days, you know? Yeah, that's one of those things I would like to be. I would like to be somebody that encourages and not discourage. I mean, some of my students, I'll catch myself being a little too hard on them, you know, and I gotta, oh, back up, back up, back. I mean, I feel like, well, I'm there to point out this. No, I'm also there to encourage. You know, I've had to learn that, you know. So hopefully I'll get there, you know.
Wow. You know, throughout this interview, if I may say, you don't sound all gushy mushy here, I have heard and felt your spirituality come out. I've heard it. I've heard it. You know, the word of God says you know them by their fruit. And I've seen it. And one of the things in your fruit I've seen is that humility, that being humble. Just being humble. You got every right to stick your chest out. I did this, I did, you know, I played up. None of that. You don't get none of that.
Well,
Say it again.
I know me too well.
Thank you so much for being on the Extraordinary Drummer Show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, man.
I really appreciate it, man. I hope you come back again and again as you get back to work after this COVID and everything. I should ask you, how you holding up with this COVID stuff? And
hey, man, my old band in LA, we played together a lot. That was my whole side project between tours and stuff. And we were talking on the phone at the beginning of this thing. It's like, man, what you guys doing? Well, nothing. We just, because they have a studio at home and things were drying up and stuff. And it's like, well, why don't I send you some stuff and y'all just throw something on it? And, well, 9 tunes later, we getting ready to put some stuff out, man. And it's fresh because it gets tricky because it's hard to categorize, because it's very honest, Basically, I'll send them drum tracks. They write to it. They send it back. I make what changes I need to make, or I'll, have a lick along with the drum things or something I want to throw in there. And it's been wonderful, man. I'm not going out a whole lot. Basically, like I say, I played this past Friday for the first time since March with live people, live, which was just, it was wonderful. Oh my goodness. It's like I didn't realize I missed it so much. But no, we're staying healthy. We're just, we're just trying to pay attention. I've got a wonderful family. Been enjoying each other and stuff. So.
You. Again, thank you so much for being on the Extraordinary Drummer Show. Will you help me wave goodbye to the audience?
All right, guys, take care. God bless you.